I want you to close your eyes for a second and picture the typical American. Are they driving a big truck? Are they wearing a cowboy hat and an American flag t-shirt? Are they eating McDonald's? If they are, then you are thinking of some stereotypes of Americans who live in the US. Let's talk about if these are true or false. If you haven't opened your eyes yet, please do that. I'm Vanessa from speakenglishwithvanessa.com, an American English speaker. I live here in the US, and today we're going to be talking about some common stereotypes of Americans. When I talk about Americans, I'm talking about the United States of America. I'm just using Americans as shorthand for people who live in the United States and the stereotypes about those people, including me. We're going to take a look at the stereotypes, what the data says about those stereotypes, and then also my personal opinion. To help you with today's lesson and to remember everything that you've learned, I have created a free PDF worksheet that you can download, print out, put under your pillow as you sleep to help you take your English to the next level and never forget anything from today's lesson. You can download this PDF with the link in the description. Let's get started with what I think is one of the most common American stereotypes, and that is big everything. Big stores, big cars, big houses, big portion sizes at restaurants. Let's talk about this. First, grocery stores, or sometimes we call them supermarkets. It's more common to call them a grocery store, but if you want an overwhelming experience, the next time you visit the US, go into a super Walmart. It's huge, enormous. You can have your eyes checked while you wait for your car to get fixed. You could buy a new baby stroller, a microwave, a set of golf clubs, a gun, and choose from hundreds of boxes of breakfast cereal. We call these places a one-stop shop because you can get everything you need in one convenient location. For me, this kind of place is a bit too overwhelming to go to regularly, but it is convenient to know that if I need something, there's one place where I can go to get it. What about cars and homes? Yes, it is true that American cars and homes are typically larger than in other places in the world. Is it cultural? Is it because we have more space? It's hard to say exactly why, but we've definitely traded the historic, beautiful, but smaller homes in Europe, for example, for not historic, not always so beautiful, but big homes in the US. As for cars, it's true. Americans have big cars, but everything in the US is so spread out that we spend a lot more time in our cars. And my personal theory is that because people have bigger and bigger cars in the US, it kind of pushes everyone into that direction. For me, I would love to have a small car, but it's dangerous if you are the only person with a small car on the road. If everyone else has a big truck, a big SUV, a big van, and you're just the only one in a little car, that is very dangerous. So a lot of people maybe feel some pressure to get a bigger car socially or for safety reasons. All right, let's talk about food now. Portion sizes. If you've ever visited the US and ordered at a restaurant, maybe you have been shocked at the portion size that you get at a restaurant. In fact, it's quite common to get what we call a doggy bag. This is a takeout bag because you can't finish all of the food on your plate, so it's common to ask the waiter, "Hey, can I get a doggy bag? Hey, can I get a box to go?" And you put the rest of your food in a box and take it to have for lunch the next day. This is really common because the portion size is enormous. In fact, take a look at this little graph. It just shows that from the 1950s and 60s, portion size in the US has been increasing dramatically. So overall, yes, things are bigger in the US. There could be a lot of reasons for this. Of course, some places like New York or LA, you're more likely going to be living in a small apartment, but the majority of Americans live outside of those big cities. They live in medium or small size cities around the US. So in general, Big cars, big houses, big stores, and big portion sizes. These things are the norm in the US. Stereotype number 2, Americans are overweight and eat fast food a lot. Unfortunately, this one is true. The data says that 2 out of 3 Americans is overweight, and over 1/3 of adults eats fast food every day. Ah! Personally, this is not at all like my lifestyle. I try really hard to be healthy, but you know what? The data doesn't lie. 2 out of 3 Americans is overweight. That is what they call an obesity crisis. Thankfully, there has been a shift towards somewhat more healthy eating. Even fast food restaurants are trying to have some options like a wrap or a salad as an option. And I think overall we're becoming more and more aware about what it is to be healthy, what kind of foods we should eat, what kind of soft drinks we should avoid, these types of things. But in general, unfortunately, this stereotype is true that Americans overall are overweight and eat fast food a lot. But I have a question for you. In your country, is going to McDonald's, Subway, or KFC, is this a common experience? I think that this is kind of expanding to the rest of the world as well. So even though it's true for Americans, it might be true for other countries too. Stereotype number 3, everyone has a gun. What does the data say? Well, this is false. Not everyone has a gun, but the data says that 1 in 3 Americans owns a gun. And overall, this is a higher percentage than in other countries around the world. Guns and gun violence are certainly controversial issues, to say the least, but Americans' personal feelings about guns really depends on where you live. If you live in a more rural area, having a gun for hunting, for protection, for your lifestyle, this type of thing is more common and it's less scary because people are more comfortable about how they work and how they're used, and they know the people who have a gun. But if you live in a more urban area, like in the city, guns are associated more with violence and it can be a much more scary thing. So it all depends on your background and where you've grown up, how you feel about guns, and what kind of feeling that brings up for you. So overall, not every American owns a gun, but it is certainly more common here than in other places around the world. Stereotype number 4, Americans never travel. Well, are we talking about international travel? Well, the data says this is true. A lot of Americans don't even have a passport. But if we're talking about domestic travel within the US, the answer is false. A lot of Americans travel domestically. I mean, have you seen the size of the US? There are so many places to visit. We often visit family who live in faraway places within the US, and this is just something cultural. I think it's also pretty tricky to travel internationally when you have to cross an ocean to get anywhere. When I lived in Europe, it's just unbelievably easy to cross a border and visit another place. This is so convenient. But when you're in the US, you have to spend a lot of money to get to another country, and we don't have as much overall vacation time from work. So if you only have a week and you're going to spend so much money to go to another country, well, you might be more likely to just take your family and drive to a local beach and be able to spend a less hectic time and more enjoyable time maybe with your family without having the hassle of international travel. So there's a lot of factors at play here, but overall, Americans don't travel much internationally, but we do travel a lot domestically. Stereotype number 5, Americans are materialistic. What's the data say about this? Well, it says that this is somewhat false. Let's take 2 different sides of this. Americans, yes, in certain places, especially big cities, can be very obsessed with brands, labels, expensive things. We have a term called keeping up with the Joneses. The last name Jones is one of the most common names in the US. Your last name is Jones. It's very common. So keeping up with the Joneses means that you are trying to maintain the same type of high quality, high class lifestyle as the people around you. Maybe your neighbors buy a cool new car. You want to buy a cool new car. You're trying to keep up with the Joneses. But on the other hand, the culture of buying secondhand is huge in the US. I've lived in a lot of places around the world where it was almost impossible to find a secondhand store that was cheap. It was all expensive, fancy, vintage clothes. But in the US, buying secondhand is extremely common. Almost all of my clothes are secondhand. It's kind of like a treasure hunt. And this kind of culture of reusing our clothes or being willing to buy something that someone else wore and that's culturally acceptable is also pretty common. So overall, I'd say it's tough to say exactly if Americans are more materialistic than other countries with the same amount of wealth, but we certainly do like shopping, even if it's at a secondhand store. Stereotype number 6, Americans only speak English. What does the data say about this? Well, it says this is false. There are over 350 languages spoken in the US, making it one of the most linguistically diverse countries around the world. There are over 40 million Spanish speakers and 3 million Chinese, including Mandarin and Cantonese speakers here. Now, there is a little catch to this. If you grew up in a household that spoke another language, for example, if your parents speak Spanish, you are more likely, of course, to speak Spanish. But if you grew up in a household that spoke only English, the chance of you as an American successfully learning a second language, especially to fluency, is quite low. So while there are a lot of people in the US who speak another language, the amount of people who learn a second language in school or just for fun is quite low. But if you're among the few who has successfully learned a second language, comment, it can really expand your worldview and just add so much fulfillment to your life. Stereotype number 7, Americans are very patriotic. What's the data say? Well, it says this is true. There was a poll and it said 41% of Americans think that the US is the best country in the world. If you come to visit the US around the 4th of July, you will see American flags everywhere. If you visit any kind of professional sporting event, you will most likely hear everyone in the stadium singing the national anthem before the sporting game. And if you live here and your kids go to a public school, they will say the Pledge of Allegiance, with your hand over your heart, looking at the flag, the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, every morning before the school day starts. Because I grew up saying the Pledge of Allegiance or singing the national anthem all the time, I thought that these things were normal, and it wasn't until I traveled outside the US that I realized that not every country is like this. So maybe this goes back to the majority of Americans not having a passport. They've never experienced it otherwise, so we're just very patriotic. There you have it. Stereotype number 8, Americans are positive, optimistic, and smile a lot. Is this true? Well, the data says yes. There was actually a really interesting study that showed in countries that have a lot of immigration, like the US, people relied on nonverbal communication, so gestures and facial expressions, more than in countries that didn't have as much immigration. Now, I'm not saying that everyone in the US is always smiling. No, this is just a stereotype, of course. But this study said that people rely on facial expressions and gestures and smiling to build trust with each other more than in countries that are more homogenous. Homogenous means that everyone is from a similar ethnic background. So what about my personal experience with this? I think that for me, yes, I smiled a lot, so maybe I fit into the stereotype. But as for the feeling positive and optimistic side, I think this is a little bit more nuanced. In the US, there is this kind of overall cultural feeling that if you work hard, you can succeed. This idea of a rags to riches story we're often told as kids about famous people who started with nothing and then they invented something really important, and then they became the president. There's all of these rags to riches stories. We call this the American dream, that if you work hard, you can succeed. And this is really underlying a feeling of optimism that if I work hard, it is up to me. It is my choice. I am the master of my own destiny, that I can do it. So there is a feeling that even if I come from a really difficult background or home, I can still succeed. That feeling of optimism, oh, there's a chance that I can do it, is present in American society. So especially considering that the US is a land of immigrants, remember that 350 languages that I talked about? A lot of people come here to find the American dream. They're chasing the American dream that if they work hard, they can succeed. So the feeling of optimism is kind of present. I'm not saying it's present on a daily basis for everyone, but it is pervasive in American culture. Our final stereotype number 9, is Americans are creative, innovative, and think outside the box. What's the data say about this? Well, it says it's pretty true. The light bulb, the telephone, the airplane, the internet, all of these things that have revolutionized the world were invented in the US. When you think about new tech inventions, we sometimes think about Silicon Valley in California. This kind of goes along with the last point of the American dream, that if you can dream it, you can make it. What about my personal opinion about this? Well, as far as creativity or innovation, yes, Americans can be those things. I think a lot of people in other countries, of course, can be those things as well. But when it comes to thinking outside the box and accepting others who are different, this kind of is expanding the idea of thinking outside the box. This is something that I really value in the US, that you can be different and you can still be accepted. And even though this is not perfectly done across the board, I think that this is a value, especially more in our modern times, that Americans are trying to do more and more. They're trying to accept people who are different, trying to accept different ideas. And overall, of course, we're talking about stereotypes here. This is something that is a value of Americans, that you can be different and you can still be accepted. So what do you think? Do you agree with this assessment of American stereotypes? I want to know. Let me know in the comments, what is a stereotype of people from your country? I'd love to learn more about the stereotypes, and tell me, do you think it's true or false what people say about people from your country? Don't forget to download the free PDF worksheet for today's lesson so that you can review all of the expressions and concepts and ideas that we talked about in this lesson. You can download it with the link in the description. Well, thank you so much for learning English with me, and I'll see you again next Friday for a new lesson here on my YouTube channel. Bye!
The next step is to download the free PDF worksheet for this lesson. With this free PDF, you will master today's lesson and never forget what you have learned. You can be a confident English speaker. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for a free English lesson every Friday. Bye!